Ahsoka is the latest Disney Plus Star Wars show, and a lot of folks talking about it. Today, I am joined by Mike from Laughing Stock Media and Laughing Stock Cinema, who's also watching Ahsoka because we watched the first two episodes. I have a review on the channel, and now we want to discuss. There's a lot to talk about. We want to discuss these two episodes and maybe talk about what's coming in the future because a lot of people really think that there's a very bright future for Star Wars if Filoni's given the ball to run with, and it looks like he is doing that. So before we go any further, if you have not seen the first two episodes of Ahsoka on Disney Plus, this is not the video for you. Go check them out. They were good episodes, and they teased a lot of big things. So Mike, what'd you think about the first two episodes?
I think that the series is pretty interesting thus far. The thing that I noticed immediately with the start of the first episode is the carryover between Ahsoka and Star Wars Rebels. So, we're both huge Star Wars fans. I've seen all the series, I've read some of the books. And so the fact that we have Clone Wars continuing into Rebels and then continuing seamlessly into Ahsoka is really interesting. You could see that Dave Filoni really has a lot of his fingerprints all over this when it comes to that. So I think it's a pretty fascinating trip into the Star Wars universe thus far. I'm interested to see exactly where the story is going to go, which is kind of what we're doing in this video.
I feel like the first two episodes of Ahsoka, based on a lot of things, not just what you said, but also the Easter eggs with the crawl, with the fact that the opening scene was like the beginning of Phantom Menace, but in reverse, where the evil Jedi are the ones going down a hallway like the Rogue One scene. Besides all that, I think the first two episodes of Ahsoka are the best first two episodes of any Disney Plus show Star Wars, including Mandalorian. I love the first two Mandalorian seasons, but they do get better as they go along. That is not an insult. That's the way
Except for
shows. Right, but shows should. Well, I said first seasons. Shows should get better as you go on.
Yeah.
With Ahsoka, they hit a home run off the bat. Now, there's a lot of characters here, a lot of new ones, and a lot of teases for things. We're going to talk about that now. So there's a scene in Ahsoka where the villains, which are the two Dark Jedi and the Night Sisters descendant, use the map, and basically this map where Thrawn is hiding, it's implied that he's hiding somewhere outside the galaxy. Now, in the history of Star Wars, before Disney bought it, during the era of the EU, there were some discussions about characters from the other galaxies, but we never actually, I don't recall anybody actually going to another galaxy. It's always been the core galaxy. You mentioned to me the other day about the Yuuzhan Vong. So Dave Filoni has done a lot of things with non-canon EU stuff, canonizing it. The Dark Troopers is one example. The idea of Palpatine, this was not Filoni, but the idea of Palpatine having clones, like all these little things, right? He has taken and restructured it for the new canon Star Wars.
Yeah.
The Yuuzhan Vong, I feel like if you're going to have a new set of villains that are not Sith, they're not Dark Jedi, they're different than Palpatine, there's something new and fresh, the Yuuzhan Vong is it, bro.
Yeah. And
Talk about it.
really, I think in terms of everything with that, it's a really fascinating storyline from the EU because it's really, in a sense, the complete opposite of everything that the characters had faced up until that point. You have these biologic-based creatures, these other alien species that are going around wiping out all the intelligent life in the other galaxy, and then they make their way to the Star Wars galaxy, and their ships are more biological in nature. They don't have the force powers, and in fact, they can basically kind of negate them.
Yeah, they nullify the Force. The Force does not work on them. If you're Palpatine, you can fire lightning and it won't affect them.
Yeah, and so it's a lot like what they introduced in the Thrawn trilogy of Timothy Zahn back in the EU, where he actually had the type of reptilian creatures that he would carry that would create bubbles in the Force that would in turn nullify it. So they haven't mentioned anything like that. We haven't seen anything like that with Thrawn yet, who hasn't shown up on screen. But with that being said, what I will say is that it is kind of a similar through line to where maybe we'll have that tied in where Thrawn will show up. He'll have one of those creatures, and he's like, oh, well, they're very similar to another creature I met when I was there. And then it's like setting up the next big bad villains, which honestly, that would be way more interesting than anything they did in the sequel trilogy. Although I kind of wonder how they're going to place it and where that would fit in.
I mean, dude, I remember before Force Awakens came out, there were fans talking about, like, okay, well, when Palpatine died, the Sith died with him, and now we're going to move on to a new set of villains. And people thought it was going to be the Yuuzhan Vong. I remember that vividly. And then when we actually saw the trailer with Kylo Ren, I knew he was going to be a Dark Jedi. I knew he wasn't a Sith because they straight up said that him and Snoke are not Sith, even though Episode 9 retconned a lot of that horribly. No matter what, they're not going to be able to really fix what they did in the sequel trilogy. But like you said, to me, it feels like when we get to the Filoni movie, which is supposed to be the payoff to all of this, that's going to be before Force Awakens, and we have this big battle with Thrawn, and then eventually, obviously, Thrawn will lose. I feel like the little hints, these Yuuzhan Vong could end up actually being the villains of episodes 10, 11, and 12. If
Yeah.
they really want to wait and hold off on it, I think that would actually, I'm not going to say it would save Star Wars, but I think the interest level would increase by fans, not just because they want to
Yeah.
see the Yuuzhan Vong, but because we've never seen the Jedi tested against something like this outside of those books. We've never seen that in movie form. So why not do something like that? Instead of doing another Dark Jedi, another Sith Lord, the same shit, I like the idea of the Jedi having to adapt to facing an enemy that's different. It makes the universe bigger, and it creates new challenges for the Jedi.
Absolutely, and that's actually a thing too. There's a few different things I could touch on there. Number one, what you said about them possibly setting it up to come after the sequel trilogy, I think that's the smartest thing they could do right now because even though it seems like they're kind of doing what Clone Wars did and they're setting everything up for the sequel trilogy right now to make it better,
Right.
flesh it out,
That's what they're trying to do.
ultimately, the way that you make this even better is that you set up what comes after that because most prequels have the problem or most interquels have an issue where it's like, well, I already know what's going to happen, so I don't care. But it's like if you use that to actually set up what happens in the sequels to the sequels, that it's like, wow, this is actually important. Now I should tune in because it's going to matter when it comes time for this down the road. So I think that's a really smart way to go about it. Another thing, too, is that because the Jedi are on such a high level with the Force, they always seem so much above the humans around them in terms of combat.
Hell
But
yeah.
if they fight an enemy that negates their powers, then suddenly the playing field is a little bit evened. So even human beings can basically fight alongside the Jedi that don't have the Force and fare just as well against the Yuuzhan Vong, theoretically, compared to if they were to, let's say, just have a lightsaber battle and just immediately get sliced and diced. So there's so much cool stuff that they could do if that's the direction they go in. But I really want to see Thrawn show up first and just see how Lars Mikkelsen's going to portray him on screen.
How did you feel about a couple of things with episode 2? And this is, well, I'm going to ask you how you felt, but also where you think it's going. I really liked that Marok, which is the Inquisitor that survived. He was cool. Like the Black Warrior who fought Ahsoka. He was cool as shit. My favorite Inquisitor so far. And the fact that there's an Inquisitor, there's actually a huge theory going on now. I don't know if you've heard this, but Sam Witwer did voices for the show, but we don't know who he's playing. The rumor is that Dark Warrior Marok is actually Starkiller from Star Wars The Force
Oh, wow.
Unleashed. Yeah, because Filoni said he was going to eventually do that, with the idea being Ahsoka was Anakin's student and Starkiller's Vader's student. They both know this the Force and they can clash. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that now. They could save that for a whole other trilogy if they wanted to, because that's a big story. They would have to tell the backstory of Starkiller and all that. But I love that character. I want to ask you first of all, how'd you feel about that Dark Warrior? Because we don't even know how the hell Inquisitors are even alive by now, so it has to be somebody who
Yeah.
survived back in the day.
It's like
Or
how the Jedi just kind of keep appearing out of nowhere, even though they should have all been wiped out by Vader like 20 years ago.
yeah, they were all hiding somewhere. And then also, I really liked the idea of that Corellian shipyard still being loyal to the Empire. I talked about this in many videos, especially during The Mandalorian, where just because there's a new republic that took over the government of the galaxy does not mean there aren't people who are Imperial loyalists who are greedy. How did you feel about that and then that Dark Warrior and where you think that's going?
Yeah, so I really like that because that's realistic. If an empire falls tomorrow, there's still going to be a lot of people who agreed with their ideology, who think that they
Like
handled
the
it
Nazis
better.
that came to America.
Yeah, or like the Soviets, the remnants after the Union kind of dissipated. It's kind of like it makes perfect sense. Like if somebody's in power for a long time, they have a complex structure, they basically brainwash into believing it. Naturally, the people are still going to believe it even after it goes away because they think that's the best way to optimize their lives. And we still see that nowadays with the modern political spectrum. But with that being said, I think that that makes sense, and it's something that they've been focusing a lot on all these different series when they're building the world about how the rich people are like, I don't care who's actually in charge, the Empire, the New Republic, doesn't make a difference to us, we're rich, you know. And then it's like there's all these little ways of doing that, or even Canto Bite a little bit, but it wasn't handled as well. And the return that, or whatever whatever that movie is called, The Last Jedi, I'm trying to
Last
block it
Jedi,
out of my
the
brain.
bad
But
movie. Yeah.
well,
But that
which
was
bad movie
that
at
that
this
made
point? But yeah.
right, but that did make sense. I mean, in the
Yeah.
real world, there is a level you can get to where no matter what government is in charge, you're going to be all right because you're going to have homes and residencies anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
Like the multimillionaires and the billionaires have that option. So I mean, that just makes perfect sense. And the idea of people still building weaponry for the Imperial Remnant makes sense. Now I was going to ask you actually that
Mhm.
guy, because remember how in that episode there was that classified document they couldn't get to about this new
Yeah.
weapon? Do you think he's building that for the Imperial Remnant, or are they already going into the First Order?
I mean, we'll have to see. It's. I was thinking because I was rewatching a little bit of Rise of Skywalker, and I was thinking that it could be those planet destroying
Star
cannons that they have
Destroyers?
on all their Star Destroyers. Yeah, maybe it's going to lead to Exegol. Because remember, it's kind of like in Episode 2 of the prequels, how like at the very end they show we have the blueprints for our
The
ultimate
Death
weapon,
Star.
the Death Star. And so it's kind of like there's a strong possibility that they're foreshadowing that because I think everything is ultimately going to lead up to that unless, you know, everyone's right and they're going to use the world between worlds to retcon the
No,
scene.
not everyone. People who make up stories say that.
Yeah, I know
The my sources have told me bullshit, bro.
the
He
people
makes
whose
up.
the people whose uncle works at Nintendo.
Yeah,
But yeah, in terms of the possibility of being
bullshitter.
Star Killer, I think that'd be awesome. I do think that he needs to be like the primary villain of an arc, though, instead of kind of like a mini boss. So you know, hopefully they're not going to just have him be like subservient to Thrawn, if that's the case. But at the same time, it is. You know, it makes sense to have an Inquisitor in the show because they're following up Rebels, and that was like one of the main enemies. The only issue I have thus far is they don't have any helicopter lightsaber.
Well,
Where they're
no, the
flying around with the lightsaber with a helicopter.
yeah, he was spinning it with that gimmick.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
didn't fly yet. We got to
No,
see
he
them
didn't do
fly
the
now. They fly
penguin,
now.
the penguin thing. You know. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
Mary
come
Poppins.
from like you. Yeah.
Yeah,
So no, but I mean, okay, and then now we know that the older gentleman, the actor passed away, so he's not coming back
yeah,
for the.
Ray
Ray
Stevenson. He's
Stevenson
great.
passed away. Yeah, he's probably gonna end up dying at some point. I would assume. And then we
Yeah.
have the apprentice. It looks like they're gonna go back to Ahsoka training Sabine again, and that's fine
Mm.
because in my head I keep thinking that I don't know if Sabine's gonna go to Luke's place to train with him, but I keep thinking that they are gonna slowly rebuild the Jedi, whether it be under Rey or under Luke.
Yeah.
Because I feel like by the time that the Yuuzhan Vong show up, if they're gonna do that later, there needs to be enough Jedi in the story. Like I almost feel like what they should do is treat episodes 10, 11, and 12 like a soft reboot, not like what they did with Force Awakens. Meaning, it's
Yeah.
kind of like Phantom Menace, where there's peace and then something comes. They tried it with Force Awakens, but it was a bit more controversial. I like the because there were no Jedi. I like the idea of there being multiple Jedi, the galaxy's replenished with them. But guess what? If the enemy knows how to nullify the Force, those Jedi are not going to be
Yeah.
as useful as they would have been 200 years ago or whatever. So because of that, like I like that direction. So I like Sabine, being there. I heard that, and I don't know if this is true. This could be a spoiler. So I'm saying I heard. Did a video on it actually. That the season finale, episode 8 of Ahsoka, that Thrawn does show up and invade the galaxy, and then there's a cliffhanger for going into the Filoni movie. Now I don't know how true that is. It doesn't sound like it's true because I feel like the show's gonna have an ending, but I would love to see that. So what do you think they're gonna do with Thrawn in the show?
Well, I think that Thrawn is going to find a hand floating in space that's holding a lightsaber, and then he's going to use it to clone evil Luke, and like all the stuff that they said was going to happen in Episode 7.
They're gonna actually
But
do it.
yeah, yeah, Thrawn was actually the one in Cloud City who caught the hand when it fell, and then he created Snoke with it. But yeah,
Thrawn is
I
actually
don't really,
Lando.
yeah. Thrawn, Thrawn was behind everything. He was Palpatine the whole time. But yeah, like I don't really know what with regard to that. It would be interesting if they somehow combine Thrawn with the Yuuzhan Vong, to where they're like he's the one leading them, and like basically he like again is the one who's using the Force nullification. But like you said, the only thing I have an issue with if Sabine and Ahsoka and a lot of these characters survive is number one, where the heck were they during the three movies? And number two,
Oh, you mean
where were
during
they during
the
the three
sequel
movies?
trilogy? You mean the
Yeah,
sequel
like
trilogy? Yeah.
what were they doing? So they have to be dead by the time that happens, you would assume. Otherwise, why didn't they show up and fight Snoke and everyone like
What?
that?
Maybe they're in
Um,
that other galaxy they're teasing.
Yeah, the thing I get the impression of is like they're almost creating some kind of like interconnected pathway that will transcend the typical warp speed that they use, so that way they'll be able to transmit Thrawn and his armies back and forth. Because like there's so much space in between galaxies, so I'm guessing what they're going to do is they're going to figure out like the space whales use some kind of like special hyperspeed lanes that go way faster, and so they're going to have everyone come and show up way faster, because otherwise it would take them what, decades to get to the galaxy, or centuries, and so they would never be able to arrive there at the current speed. So otherwise people would be traveling back and forth between galaxies all the time,
Well,
so they're good. I think
didn't
that's
they?
kind of what they're building right now.
I was gonna say, didn't they tease that in the episode? How they're teasing like some kind of new kind of hyperspeed to get to the other galaxy. That's what it felt
Yeah,
like to me. Yeah, but again,
yeah, and
like
like
you
the map
said,
showed like a line, so
yeah, the orange line. But like you said, why wasn't that used in the sequel trilogy? I'm sure they'll
yeah.
explain it. But no, it's interesting because, like I said, we've never left the known galaxy. We've never been outside of that. So, as a result of that, that could only open up a whole new world of possibilities for Star Wars, and that's why I think Filoni's being very ambitious, but I think at this point you have to be. I think there's so much bad equity. I had a friend of mine I talked to earlier. He said he's never seen Ahsoka or The Mandalorian, and he knows he's heard they're good, and I'm like, why? And he said the sequel trilogy was so bad, it turned me off to anything Star Wars. There's a lot of fans out there, bro, who were so disappointed in the sequel trilogy they gave up on everything. Even if Mandalorian's good,
Yeah.
even if like it doesn't matter to them. Filoni's gonna have to make a movie that's so badass, that's so well made that I don't know if they'll ever be able to repair the damage. Part of me thinks that Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker did irreparable damage to the franchise, like that they're just not coming back from. The other part of me thinks that Filoni could do it, but not for everyone. There are some people where it's done. Like there's some people who just think that Disney Star Wars is non-canon to them and everything before it is the real
Yeah,
canon.
I definitely understand that. It's like
Me too.
there's a series that's being made by it's a fan made series by Darth Angelus on his channel, the Heir to the Empire, where he's doing like a CG animation of the original sequels to the original trilogy with the Thrawn trilogy, and it's great so far. It's better than anything in the sequel. So I understand why people are like, I much rather prefer the EU and the comics and video games because it was better. But um, I guess time will have to tell. I'm still not going to really like those movies, regardless of what extra context they give and stuff. But they could definitely diminish. They could diminish the effects, like George Lucas said, of how terrible they've handled everything by fixing certain issues. Like if they pull Luke out of the world between worlds and then he shows up and he's actually like a Jedi Grandmaster and stuff after Episode 9, it's like okay, well, let's use time travel to fix it. At least it's better
No,
than nothing.
but the thing, yeah, okay, I don't know about them using time travel like that, but the idea of resurrecting somebody who's dead, that's always been intriguing to me. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, that's something that's also a cheap story device sometimes, but if they figure out a way for episodes 10, 11, and 12, or whatever, down beyond episode 9, to reincarnate or resurrect Kylo Ren and Luke, I do
Yeah.
think it would actually go well if done right. Now, here's my idea. It has to be some that exists in the other galaxy. I feel like in the galaxy that we're in now, the Jedi and all the Force users have a very limited and narrow-minded view of the Force. I feel like if there's something like that, whether it be an artifact or a location or some kind of power, it
Yeah.
probably should be in that other galaxy. So in other words, the idea that's racing through my head is Ahsoka could be building up to this new era of discovery in the galaxy to where we're going again, it's like a soft reboot. We're going beyond the saga of the Skywalkers. We're going beyond what we know already into this new galaxy that might have all kinds of new shit that we never even heard of before. And that's exciting to me. I'm not saying they're going to do it, but that does excite me because it almost comes off like what Star Trek tried to do in a little bit. I mean, there were some
Yeah.
similarities there. Even the Yuuzhan Vong, they're kind of like the Borg. There's
Oh yeah.
similarities there. So yeah, and I like that. So before we wrap it up, man, I do you have a prediction on like the finale here? I'm guessing that you know the current Dark Jedi are probably gonna die, but I don't think Thrawn's gonna die, bro. I don't think they're gonna
No.
get rid of him that fast.
I don't think. I think that he's probably going to. If he does die, he's going to do it during at least the first movie. I mean, for all we know, there could be multiple movies that they're setting up with this.
I
So
know.
I feel like who would kill Thrawn? I'm guessing it would either be Ahsoka or Ezra. I feel like by the end of the season, Thrawn, we already know Thrawn's going to be on screen. We've seen that like behind the scenes and whatever. But with
Yeah, the
like
trailer.
Ezra, I think Ezra's going to be on screen at some point too, beyond that hologram. A lot of people have predicted Ezra's going to be evil, and
Yes, I've seen that.
so that could be a twist. I don't know why he would suddenly turn evil after all the stuff he went through in Rebels, but
Exactly. For
you
those
know,
who don't know, there was a
um,
whole story arc in Rebels with him and Darth Maul where he was tempted to go evil, and it was kind of like Darth Maul was pulling him in the dark side direction, but Kanan, his master, was pulling him toward the light. And so people are guessing that. But you're right. If he just turns evil now, what would be the point?
yeah, so I think that by the end of the season, Ezra, they are going to find Ezra. He's going to show up and take the mantle of trying to be the heroic Jedi, and then Thrawn's going to show up, and he's going to be there as the ultimate villain, setting everything up and revealing a big twist of like, here's my army that I've been building when I've been gone, or this is going to be the final order from Palpatine, and setting up possibly some major things that are going to happen with regard to that.
Well, the final order
I
was in
think
episode
that
9, remember?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like he maybe Thrawn isn't part of the stuff. Maybe he's one of the people who helped to set up the First Order.
Right.
We do see like in Mandalorian, there's like the competing Moffs and things like that. If I remember
Yeah,
correctly,
what's it called,
like
the
one of
Dark
them was
Council?
Gideon.
The
Yeah,
dark, yeah.
exactly.
I
So
love that.
I
I
feel like
love that
that's gonna play a
aspect.
part for sure. Yeah. So I think that we're going to see setup for something bigger to come, either Ahsoka season 2 or that movie, and that's going to be like the ending. Ezra and Thrawn show up, and the table is ready for what's going to happen
And we
next.
know that there's more Mandalorian also coming. They might not bring back the Boba Fett show, and to be honest, I'm
Yeah.
okay with that. But we know there's more Mandalorian coming now because he's working for the New Republic. But that is a question, though. Are these characters going to survive all the way to Episode 7 and beyond? I think some of them will, some of them won't. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm surprised that Kanan, not to spoil it, but he's the only main character in Rebels to bite. Everybody else survived, and even Chopper was in episode 2, and that was
Yeah.
cool to see. But yeah, anyways, y'all check out Laughing Stock Cinema and Laughing Stock Media. Mike said before we started recording he's going to be doing a season recap when the show's over. But
Yep.
maybe what we'll do is we'll have you on every couple of episodes to get your thoughts so far as it's going along. That'd be kind of fun to just, we talk about things like as they're coming out and see what comes true and what doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I just know that I trust
uh,
Filoni. I trust Filoni. I
yeah,
really do.
I think that he has a lot more credibility built up when it comes to creating something good compared to a lot of the other people behind the scenes there, especially.
He is George Lucas's. He is the heir to the empire. I think he is the guy. Like,
Yeah.
and the thing is, people shit on Kathy Kennedy, bro, and I get it. But if she basically steps back and gives him the authority to be the leader of Star Wars, the lead producer, that's the best choice she's made since taking over Lucasfilm. I don't think that he wants her job. That's not what I'm talking about. She's still the top dog, but he could be under her and she could just be giving him full reign to do whatever he needs to do to get Star Wars back on track. That's the smartest thing they could possibly do, in my opinion.
Yeah, Disney needs they need to clean house a little bit in terms of their leadership, I feel like.
I agree with you. I mean, there's a rumor they might get sold to Apple, which is crazy.
Yeah.
We'll see. Take care, y'all. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.